Okay, so today I want to talk about the most important social skill, the 3 reasons why it matters so much, and then at the end get into how to actually put it into practice, because there are ways to do it badly that are counterproductive. The most important social skill, in my opinion, is social curiosity. This is curiosity applied to people. Curiosity is very important in general. If you want to sort of live your best life, the 3 traits you want to cultivate are curiosity, warmth, and authentic self-confidence. For today, I just want to talk about curiosity, the one trait, and specifically apply to socializing. If people come in and talk to me, they tell me they've had a date, I have a really good chance of guessing if it was a good date just by asking one question. Did they ask you about yourself? 75% of the time? The answer is, yeah, not really. This is really what good or bad dates come down to a lot of the time. Did they have social curiosity? Were they curious about me as a person? And a lot of times they're not. So the 2 ways this comes out, on a date or socially, is talking about yourself a lot. There is a great joy in self-disclosing, in expressing the things that we find interesting to other people and having them listen. That's great. However, some people do that the whole time, and that's pretty disconnecting. Or else the other issue that I see is people who are not curious, but also not talking about themselves. So this is more just kind of like sitting quietly. It can go wrong in either of those ways. But what's missing in both cases is social curiosity, which is the interest in other people and figuring out who they are, what's going on with them, who are they, what makes them interesting. This one will make a pretty big impact pretty quickly. Start with learning and practicing social curiosity. Part of the reason why is you can put it into action and it'll make an impact quickly. It's so important and people like it so much that if you do this, you build up social capital. You put money in the bank that you can spend on everything else. Meaning, if you are socially curious, it's such a likable trait that people will forgive you other mistakes or other things that you're not doing well. I first learned this because I came to the US from Australia in the 90s when there was barely an internet. So Australia was a really exotic place and people didn't know much about it. So me being from Australia was really interesting. When I first got to college, that was great. And I had some fun conversations about it. But after a while, I had the same conversation anytime I went to any party or met a new person. They want to talk about Australia. Koalas, kangaroos, crocodile hunter saying crikey, throw another shrimp on the barbie, Foster's, Australian for beer, and the Outback Steakhouse. After a while, that became really, really boring. So I was sort of forced in this situation so as to not have a terrible time at parties. I was forced to try to figure out what else can I do. So what I started doing was realizing I would have a much better time socially if I could start getting to know other people. If I could find out what was interesting about them. What I discovered is everyone's interesting. You can learn new things about people or they can teach you new things. So I learned to do this in parties. So I could end up having a great time. The first reason to work on social curiosity is that it makes socializing more fun for you. If you were sitting there just talking, the conversation's not going to last that long. If you can learn to be socially curious, you can end up on all these interesting new topics. You can learn these new depths about people. The second reason is that it's just flat out an attractive trait. So there's research on this. People find curiosity appealing. This makes sense. Like if you think about it, maybe from your own personal experience, if you've talked to someone who had curiosity about you, who wanted to know more about you, it makes you feel good. You can sense it sometimes when you meet somebody who doesn't have this. Like if you're in a conversation with somebody and they're not interested in you, you can feel how that makes you feel bad. Like it feels rejecting. And the reason why is social curiosity is a way of investing into you. And it sends this message that I think there's something interesting about you, or I value you enough to invest my energy into you. So related to this, kind of explaining partly why this works, there's research that self-disclosure, which is basically telling people about yourself, it's really powerful. You ask them questions, they tell you about themselves, you accept it, you both like each other more. It's bonding and connecting. In fact, that mutual self-disclosure process is a large part of what connection is. Number 3, if you have any social anxiety, then this is pretty important for you. With social anxiety, Our attention is self-focused. We are processing ourselves. How am I coming across? Am I living up to the standards? Can people tell that I'm nervous? What do they think of me? We are literally self-conscious. We're processing ourselves. And when we do that, that ratchets our anxiety up. It makes sense, partly because we are thinking that we're doing badly. So we need to get our attention off of ourselves. And what is the most useful and easiest way to do that? It's to take our attention and externalize it onto something else or somebody else. And the best way to do that, you'll be very surprised to hear, social curiosity. So if you are by yourself, then being curious about the world around you, what's happening, observing things. But if you are engaged with somebody, there's some kind of social interaction, then being curious about them gets you off of yourself and onto them. Find out why they're interesting. Be curious about them. People will tell me a lot of times, once they get into a conversation, their anxiety starts to come down. They start to lose themselves in the conversation. So what this means, you ask someone about themselves, you want to know more about them. They tell you, so they give you the gift of like self-disclosing. And then that other important element is accepting this. So this means that you don't criticize them for it. You don't tell them that they're wrong. You don't ignore it and say, oh, anyway, all about me. Like that's accepting it. These are the 3 reasons why social curiosity is so important. You'll have a better time socially. People will like it and like you more, and you'll be less anxious. Let's talk about how to do this. So anytime I'm working on treating somebody in some way, I want to look at social cognition and applications. This means I want you to understand the concept so that you can apply it broadly. But then I also want to give you a way to actually put it into practice. The mindset I want you to have is everyone is interesting. When you interact with anybody, find out something new about them. Find out what makes them interesting. I always start with what I call the simplicity principle. From all my years of researching and helping people with this, what I find is that the most important things are the simplest. It's no use focusing on super complicated things until you've got the foundational things down. They're called foundational because they are the foundation upon which everything rests. Start with the simple stuff. The simple stuff is really, really powerful. Don't work on flying backwards kicks until you can do like really basic things, right? If you don't know where to start, this is the simplest one. Repeat back any question that someone asks you. Do social curiosity. You don't even have to think of the question. They've already thought of the question. Whatever they ask you about yourself, give your answer, self-disclose, and then say, what about you? They ask you how you're doing, you tell them how you're doing, and then you ask, how are you doing? Well, they ask you, what did you do for the weekend? You tell them, like, what did you do for the weekend? A lot of times too, a little trick here, people will want to talk about a certain topic, but they'll kind of get that they don't just want to like talk about themselves the whole time. So they might ask a question because they really want to tell you what they think about it. So they might ask you, hey, what do you think about this thing? You give them your answer. They really want you to ask, hey, what do you think about this thing? This is the easiest one. If you get super stressed out and anxious and you can't think of a good question, and questions aren't good enough, just repeat back the question they've asked you. We know it's good enough because they already used it. The second one here, which is a little bit more difficult, but still simple, is ask follow-up questions. Don't just ask a question, get the answer, and then think, oh no, I'm supposed to ask social curiosity questions. Do you have any pets? Like, don't jump from topic to topic. It's much, much easier, and it's way more connecting if you just ask a follow-up. You don't even have to think of a topic here, because people will self-disclose spontaneously. So when they've self-disclosed, they've told you about something, think about, what do I want to know about that? What's a follow-up I can ask on this particular topic that would tell me more about them? What have they left out of this? A lot of times it's like, why? Or what happened next? Why did you choose to do this? Go deeper on that topic rather than going shallow on a lot of topics. So this is useful because it gets you out of that interviewing style of curiosity that people can feel bad about sometimes, or the like 20 questions version where you're just bombarding somebody with questions. If you do follow-ups, they tell you about something and you ask a follow-up question, it'll feel really natural. Getting a little more advanced here. If you want to be the social leader and you want to carry the conversation a little bit, so you want to generate some conversation, there's some ways of doing this. You're really looking for what is an usable, interesting topic, and then starting to ask for follow-up questions on that. Ask whatever makes you curious about that. I like to, as you know, simplicity principle. Let's start with the simple stuff. My version of this, I will do this pretty much all the time with everybody because it is natural and simple. I ask them some version of, hey, how's it going? They will give you an answer. And maybe they will tell you something that piques your curiosity. So you ask them more about that. Like they say, oh, I'm really tired. Well, social curiosity, oh, like what's going on? Why are you so tired? If they give you something like that. If they don't, if they treat it like a greeting, they say, good, thanks. Then I ask them, what have you been up to lately? And this is a way of allowing them, it's social curiosity, but it's allowing them to give you potential topics to work with that they find interesting because this is their life. They might say, oh, I've been traveling lately, or there's been a ton going on at work. And that's basically, if they're bringing that up, that's your social curiosity topic. Go deeper on that, ask follow-up questions on that. If they say not much, which again is people not realizing you're actually being curious and they think it's a greeting, I will oftentimes make it clear, no, I'm being curious. I'll say, like, anything interesting going on for you lately? Sometimes they'll give you more with that. Otherwise, this is now the really more advanced, is you've got to kind of bring something up. So this is kind of the hardest version. Don't start with this. Start with the easy stuff. The hardest version is, then you've got to introduce a topic. And if you know them, maybe it's something you know that they already have an interest in. And you can ask them, hey, have you been continuing to play football? Have you been collecting vintage cars? Some topic you know about them, ask them about that. Or, simple one, I always do the weekend. What did you get up to last weekend? Or what do you have planned for this weekend coming up? Then we get to sort of the more common, like, basic topics, like any trips planned? Have you been on any trips? Then we're into seeing movies, seeing TV shows. And when you get into this stuff, this is more advanced. I could do like maybe a more complex video on advanced social curiosity. We're looking for what draws you to that thing. Why does that interest you? Where did that come from? We're looking at, do you have an opinion on this thing? Why do you have that opinion? And then experiences. Have you done this before? Have you not? Why would you do this thing? This is more advanced ideas, but all of this is curiosity, it's social curiosity. If you want more on this, and really this idea of curiosity, the research on it, how to do it, it's all the way through my book. Go to chapter 3 if you have it. There's specifically chunks on curiosity, but the whole thing, curiosity is woven through the whole book. As is warmth, as is authenticity, which is the trifecta you're going for here. Let me know if you have any troubles with this, struggles with this, because I will make another video on this where I try to get it like troubleshooting of like things that are hard for you with social curiosity. And I'll show you kind of how to do that. So I'm going to express my own social curiosity. Does this work for you? What problems do you have with it? Have you tried putting it into practice? And as always, what other topics you want to hear about? I'm Dr. Thomas Smith, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm an author of this book here, Dating Without Fear, Overcome Social Anxiety and Connect. If you have any social anxiety, shame, self-doubt, this can be really helpful for you, especially if in the dating world, but the same stuff applies to social life, to work life. If you're interested, it's available paperback, Kindle, and also my favorite version, which is Audible. I read it, so I really like that one too. Okay, thanks.